The crown has officially fallen, not in a blaze of street glory, but in a flood of raw, unedited tears streaming down the face of a completely broken king. In a shocking late-night emergency live broadcast that has completely paralyzed the global hip-hop community, a visually devastated Clifford T. Harris completely broke down on camera, officially announcing the permanent immediate end of his legendary 25-year music career. Suffocated by a ruthless Matrix-driven industry-wide boycott, a completely sabotaged commercial rollout for his final album, Kill the King, and the devastating betrayal of his closest multi-platinum allies. The self-proclaimed King of the South reached his absolute breaking point. This wasn't the calculated, unyielding arrogance fans have seen for decades. This was the agonizing, helpless meltdown of a rap icon watching his life's work get systematically erased by the industry elite. As he choked back tears before millions of concurrent viewers, T.I. exposed a dark list of names, elite industry figures, and longtime brothers who secretly turned their backs on him to protect their own multi-million-dollar corporate assets. The digital world is currently in a state of total pandemonium. And the real chilling truth behind this emotional execution will change everything you know about loyalty in the music business. Don't look away, because the final chapter of the Southern Kingdom is burning to the ground in real time. To truly grasp the devastating weight of seeing the undisputed pioneer of trap music reduced to tears on a live public feed, you have to understand the massive legacy Clifford T. Harris Jr. spent a quarter of a century building. From the moment he emerged from the rugged Bankhead neighborhood of Atlanta, he carried himself with an unyielding regal authority. He survived federal weapons charges that should have ended his freedom, dominated the global charts with multi-platinum anthems, and maintained an uncompromised street credibility that made him completely untouchable. For decades, his grand hustle empire stood as a proud monument to independent Southern rap, a machine that proved a street-bred king could dictate his own terms without ever bowing down to major corporate gatekeepers. He was a resilient survivor, an ultimate warrior who never ran from a conflict, making his sudden emotional vulnerability all the more shocking to the culture. But the music industry of 2026 is no longer the open arena he once conquered. It has transitioned into a sterile, hyper-consolidated corporate monopoly governed by secret algorithms, tech streaming boards, and faceless conglomerates that prioritize complete corporate compliance over authentic artistic freedom. After years of quiet semi-retirement, T.I. returned to the studio with a deep sense of cultural obligation to deliver his absolute masterpiece, a final farewell project titled Kill the King. This retirement album was intended to be his definitive victory lap, a brilliant independent rollout designed to celebrate his classic trap roots and seamlessly pass the torch down to his sons through a massive nationwide stadium tour. The initial organic response from fans was massive. But in the dark shadows of the industry boardrooms, a cold and calculated plot was already being hatched to permanently isolate the Atlanta Titan. The root of this systemic execution traces back to a highly confidential, multi-million-dollar battle over the classic Grand Hustle master catalog. Elite major label syndicates and tech streaming platforms desperately wanted control of his historic music library, but T.I. fiercely refused to sell out his independent legacy. When he publicly blasted these corporate gatekeepers for attempting to exploit legendary artists, the Matrix struck back with clinical, devastating precision. They initiated a quiet, systematic digital blackout, dropping his music from key playlists and suppressing his algorithmic recommendation data. Then came the explosive backstage altercation at the 2026 BET Awards. The corporate apparatus instantly weaponized that street-level incident, using it as the perfect public relations excuse to hit him with a global venue ban. Within 48 hours, stadium insurance policies were denied. Cross-promotional contracts vanished, and longtime industry friends abruptly stopped answering his calls to protect their own corporate wealth. The overwhelming financial chokehold and deep personal betrayal created an unbearable psychological pressure cooker inside his Atlanta compound, making this heartbreaking live broadcast an absolute tragic inevitability. It was exactly 2:45 a.m. on a humid Tuesday night when the mobile phones of millions of hip-hop fans flashed with an emergency notification that would instantly alter the history of modern music. Bypassing his official public relations team, his digital marketing managers, and his corporate distribution channels, T.I. had suddenly initiated a completely unannounced live broadcast directly from his personal Instagram account. Viewers who clicked on the stream expecting another standard, aggressive, and defiant rant against industry gatekeepers were instantly struck by a chilling, gut-wrenching sight that left the entire community in absolute, horrified silence. The setting was completely dark, illuminated only by the harsh raw blue glare of a single studio computer monitor. T sat directly in front of the lens, dressed in a plain black shirt, his head completely bare, completely stripped of the expensive jewelry and regal wardrobe he had worn as armor for 25 years. For the first 3 minutes of the broadcast, an absolute haunting silence filled the audio feed. The rap titan, who had stood completely tall against federal prosecutors, high-profile indictments, and violent street shootouts, was visibly shaking on camera. His eyes were heavily bloodshot, swollen, and completely filled with tears that he could no longer contain. When he finally began to speak, his voice was entirely broken, stripped of its trademark aristocratic eloquence, and reduced to a fragile, desperate whisper that sounded like a man facing his absolute execution. "I can't do this anymore, man." T choked out, a heavy tear rolling down his face in full view of over 300,000 concurrent viewers who were frantically flooding the comment section with pure panic. "I fought for a quarter of a century to keep the South independent. I bled for this culture. I built platforms out of nothing, and I put millions of dollars into the pockets of men who didn't have a single dime to their name before I picked them up. But the Matrix is just too big, man. They didn't just blacklist my retirement album. They completely froze my operational capabilities. They took everything I spent my entire life building and turned it into an uninsurable hazard overnight. I want my fans to hear it directly from my mouth before they try to rewrite my story. I am officially permanently retiring from the music industry tonight. Grand Hustle is closing its doors forever. The king is dead, and the system won." The sight of the legendary artist openly sobbing on a public camera feed sent immediate psychological shockwaves through the digital universe. Think about the sheer emotional weight of that moment for a second. This wasn't a calculated marketing stunt or a scripted performance. This was the agonizing, helpless breakdown of a cultural pioneer watching his entire life's work get systematically erased by a faceless corporate machine. But as the stream continued, his raw emotional meltdown quickly transitioned into a volatile, tear-fueled exposure of his innermost circle. With his hands visibly trembling, T held his personal phone up to the camera lens, exposing private, leaked text messages and calling out his multi-platinum peers by name, elite industry figures, legendary producers, and longtime brothers who had shared stages with him for over 2 decades. He revealed that the exact millisecond the corporate boycott hit the rollout for Kill the King, his phone went completely dead. He exposed how his closest allies, men he had personally sheltered and elevated during his commercial peak, sent him private messages explicitly stating they could no longer clear their vocal features for his album or be seen with him publicly because they were absolutely terrified of losing their own multi-million-dollar distribution deals with major corporate conglomerates. Just as the comment section was fracturing into an absolute coliseum of pure chaos, fury, and disbelief, the first massive, terrifying twist of the night dropped like a nuclear bomb directly onto the broadcast. Right in the middle of a sentence, as T.I. was crying while detailing a secret conversation about enforced account freeze, the live video feed did not simply lag or drop its connection. The stream experienced a sudden forced administrative shutdown executed from the back end of the platform. The screen abruptly cut to black, replaced by a cold, official corporate placeholder message stating that the account's digital streaming privileges had been strictly restricted due to an immediate intellectual property and asset compliance order. Within less than 20 minutes of this sudden blackout, an anonymous whistleblower operating deep within the high technical infrastructure of the streaming platform leaked to secure encrypted system log to an underground music industry watch network. The leaked logs revealed a shocking reality that made the situation infinitely worse than anyone could have imagined. The live stream hadn't been cut off due to a standard community guidelines violation or automatic copyright filtering. A massive institutional financial consortium had executed a prepackaged emergency legal injunction that automatically hijacked and seized T.I.'s active digital broadcast assets in real time. The tears he was crying on camera weren't just about simple emotional exhaustion. They were the direct result of a hidden cold-blooded corporate maneuver that was actively stripping him of his personal identity while he was speaking to the world. The realization hit the culture like a physical blow. The independent king hadn't just been silenced by his enemies. He had been completely disarmed, trapped in a legal cage, and cut off from the world at the exact moment he tried to expose the truth. The immediate, forceful shutdown of T.I.'s live broadcast didn't silence the unfolding catastrophe. It acted as pure, unadulterated rocket fuel for a massive online firestorm that completely consumed the digital landscape within minutes. The hashtag Savit skyrocketed to the #1 trending topic globally as hundreds of thousands of terrified fans frantically uploaded screen-recorded clips of his emotional breakdown across TikTok X and underground forums. Can you even begin to comprehend the sheer terror of watching a 25-year cultural titan get manually deactivated right before your eyes while trying to bare his soul? The entire internet began screaming corporate censorship, demanding answers from the tech platforms that had so callously muted a legend. But just as the public rage reached a boiling point, a secondary, infinitely more sinister revelation leaked out of a prominent entertainment law firm in Atlanta, completely shattering everything we thought we knew about T.I.'s sudden retirement. A verified, highly confidential 30-page corporate distribution contract from his 2026 independent rollouts was suddenly dropped onto an encrypted investigative journalism database. The contents of this document sent absolute shockwaves of pure horror through the independent music community, exposing a terrifying financial trap that had been meticulously laid to completely destroy him. Buried deep within Section 44 under a highly complex predatory clause labeled behavioral indemnification and corporate reclamation lay the ultimate financial guillotine. The leaked contract explicitly revealed that due to a massive multi-million-dollar bridge loan T.I. had quietly taken out to fund the independent production of his final stadium tour and multimedia ventures, he had unknowingly signed away his ultimate emergency collateral to an anonymous institutional consortium. The clause dictated that if the artist engaged in any public behavior that resulted in an uninsurable public relations liability, such as a violent backstage security clash at a major televised network event, the controlling corporate entity retained the absolute unilateral right to seize not just his future streaming royalties, but the actual legal trademark ownership of his professional rap name T.I. and his entire physical likeness. Do you understand what this actually means? The shocking, tearful announcement he made on camera wasn't an act of free will or emotional exhaustion. T didn't simply choose to walk away from his music career. He was legally forced into immediate retirement because the corporate matrix had literally stolen the right for him to be himself. The system had commodified his name, hijacked his 25-year legacy, and used the pre-planned BET Awards brawl as the exact legal trigger to strip him of his artistic identity forever. As the social media landscape went into an absolute frenzy, prominent music accounts began publishing verified internal emails from major streaming networks showing that all upcoming automated catalog revenue streams for Grand Hustle had been manually redirected to an offshore corporate escrow account. The proudest, most independent king in Southern hip-hop history had been systematically reduced to an employee of his own name, completely powerless as his life's work was locked down by anonymous suits in New York. Rumors immediately began ripping through the Atlanta music underground that T.I. was pacing the floors of his private compound in absolute panic, surrounded by specialized legal advisors and street enforcers, trying to find a loophole before the corporate seizure became permanent. But just as the industry prepared to write his final obituary, a chilling counter-report emerged, hinting that the Broken King was secretly preparing a devastating nuclear option that would pull the entire corporate structure down into the abyss with him, leaving the music industry trapped on the edge of a terrifying standoff. The global urban landscape has officially descended into an absolute state of toxic paralysis. The terrifying sight of a 25-year icon sobbing openly on camera before being systematically deactivated by a cold corporate enforcement action has permanently fractured the hip-hop community into two bitterly hostile factions. The digital public square did not merely react. It experienced a total chaotic meltdown that completely overwhelmed social media server networks within hours. Millions of fans worldwide are now locking themselves into intense online debates, downloading every second of the emergency broadcast and picking apart T.I.'s tearful exposure of his innermost circle. During an emergency, highly explosive live broadcast of his top-rated podcast network, Joe Budden completely lost his composure, throwing his microphone across the studio and pacing frantically while addressing the dark corporate execution. "I told you all that this industry is a literal slaughterhouse for independent artistry," Budden shouted, his voice cracking with pure, raw emotion. "We just watched a legendary Southern King weep on a public camera feed because the system manually deleted his identity. T stood as the absolute architect of the modern Atlanta sound. And the moment he refused to surrender his classic Grand Hustle masters to the elite syndicates, they pulled the structural trap. They used an unverified award show incident to deny his arena insurance, suppress his streaming algorithms, and legally strip him of his actual professional name. For his longtime multi-platinum brothers to completely turn their phones off and refuse album features just to protect their corporate distribution checks is the most disgusting display of cowardice in hip-hop history. The Matrix didn't just force him into retirement. So, buy a bottle of my cognac to wash down those independent tears." The comment section under the post immediately transformed into a brutal battleground with millions of users fiercely debating whether the trolling was pure, comedic gold, or an unforgivable betrayal of cultural solidarity during an unprecedented industry crisis. Meanwhile, high-profile media houses and urban commentary platforms are completely split down the center. Prominent cultural critics are releasing intense hour-long video essays framing the sudden collapse as a necessary, long-overdue reality check for the genre. They argue that an artist cannot continuously demand institutional respect from Wall Street investors while actively surrounding themselves with a volatile street entourage that engages in violent backstage altercations. They claim that the corporate consortium did exactly what any responsible financial entity had to do to protect their multi-million-dollar assets from unpredictable liability. As the fierce public divide between Team Independent and Team Matrix reaches a terrifying peak, major corporate brands are officially engaging a complete freeze on all regional endorsement deals associated with the Grand Hustle name, leaving the entire Southern rap economy hovering over the absolute edge of an unmitigated commercial apocalypse. Just when the global collective audience believed that T.I. had been completely crushed, stripped of his professional name, and driven out of the music business forever, the narrative didn't just shift. It experienced a total catastrophic inversion that has left the entire legal infrastructure of urban entertainment in a state of absolute blind panic. At exactly 3:45 a.m., a hidden digital countdown timer was suddenly activated on the official Grand Hustle Records domain, flashing a glowing crimson clock counting down to 48 hours from this very moment. Along with the clock, a heavily distorted audio file from T.I.'s private home studio network was uploaded directly to the landing page, accompanied by a single, terrifying line of plain text. "You can take the name, but you can never stop the reckoning." The shocking reality behind this counteroffensive has completely flipped the script on who the real victim and the real villain of this tragedy actually is. High legal insiders operating deep within the federal regulatory circuits of Atlanta have quietly confirmed that the raw tears we saw streaming down T.I.'s face during that fateful live broadcast weren't tears of simple submission or defeat. They were the intense, overwhelming, emotional release of a man who knew he was about to pull the ultimate, devastating nuclear trigger on the entire music industry matrix. The leaked filings revealed that less than 1 hour before T.I. sat down in front of that blue studio light to launch a stream, his primary legal defense counsel had successfully submitted a massive, comprehensive 300-page whistleblower packet directly to the Antitrust Division of the Department of Justice. The documents on that drive don't just protect T.I.'s personal catalog. They contain a series of highly classified, illegally recorded boardroom audio tapes exposing a massive secret cartel operated by the top streaming platforms and distribution houses. The evidence explicitly details a coordinated multi-year plan to artificially suppress the algorithms of independent black-owned record labels, forcing these legacy artists into artificial financial crisis. So, the consortium could acquire their historic master catalogs for pennies on the dollar. T knew that the moment he launched this federal offensive, the corporate machine would instantly use his predatory loan contract to seize his professional name and deactivate his stream as a desperate defensive measure. He intentionally allowed them to do it on a live public feed, setting a high-profile public relations trap that completely exposes their absolute ruthlessness to the entire world. As we speak, the entire corporate hierarchy is in an absolute frenzy, with emergency board meetings being called from New York to Silicon Valley. T.I. is currently locked inside his heavily secured Atlantic compound, completely silent, while the elite executives have completely vanished from the public eye. Rumors are already swirling that a series of high-level federal subpoenas have already been drafted for the top power players in the music business. The countdown timer is ticking away on the Grand Hustle Network, and the terrifying question hanging over the entire culture is simple. What happens when that clock hits absolute zero? The final chapter of this historic war hasn't even been written yet, and the incoming blast radius promises to completely incinerate the reputations of hip-hop's highest billionaires. Don't move a single inch, because the absolute point of no return has just been crossed. Did the corporate matrix truly break T.I. and force him to surrender his legendary crown? Or did the King of the South pull off the most dangerous federal trap in hip-hop history? Will the Department of Justice execute real arrests when that countdown hits zero? Or will the billionaire elite silence him forever? Drop your absolute theories in the comments below right now, because corporate lawyers are scrambling to scrub this video fast. To get the exclusive breakdown the exact second those secret boardroom files leak, smash that subscribe button, hit the like button, and lock in all notifications immediately. Do not look away.